All right, so my sidekick, Lydia, and I are going to make a short political video, hopefully the first many to come, and it'll be interrupted in 100 other things, but it'll be interesting. So this last weekend, my name is Will Martin. I am running for Fayette County Judge. I'm a pastor here in Fayette County, and this last weekend, because I'm running on the Libertarian ticket as a Libertarian, I got to represent Fayette County Libertarian Party as a delegate to the state convention, and so it was really interesting, really good time, and a couple of things that I wanted to, try and communicate with those in Fayette County in particular, but really anybody everywhere, just something about libertarianism as a thing, as a political party, as an idea. And so I'm going to try and keep this as brief as I can. I have 3 things on what libertarianism is not, and then 3 things on what it is. Okay, that's the scope, the big idea. And Lydia might wave at you on occasion. So first of all, what libertarianism, there it is, does not mean. Number 1, libertarianism does not mean liberal. It doesn't mean liberal. When we think in our, at least commonly when we use the term liberal or conservative, we mean those on the left and those on the right, those that are Democrats, those that are Republicans. Libertarianism is devoted not to the liberal side of things, but it is devoted to the word liberty, freedom. It is viewed as freedom is something that man that God has bestowed upon man, and it cannot be revoked by anyone for any reason. Your freedom. And so libertarianism is devoted to the idea that men are free and ought to remain so, and that the government needs to relearn this idea. Number 2, what it does not mean. A lot of, especially Christians, when they hear, and that's kind of the world I track in, but it's true for everybody, a lot of people, when they hear about libertarianism, they think, it means pro weed. And so, somebody has asked me, a Christian has asked me, so you're a pothead and you want your kids to be potheads? And the answer is no, I'm not a pothead, and no, I don't want my kids to be potheads either. But what it does mean, so it's not pro-weed, what libertarians do affirm is that it's not the government's job to regulate such things. Now that's a kind of a novel idea, that we can talk about any idea. This applies not just to marijuana, but it applies to 1,000 other things, that we could ask all we want. Is that right, or is it wrong? Is it good? Is it bad? Does it help you become a happy, healthy being? Or does it hurt and hinder you? That's one question. Is it good? Is it bad? An entirely different question is, whose responsibility is it to keep you from doing such things? So let's, just for the sake of argument, which I'm not necessarily willing to concede that point, but just for the sake of argument, let's say it's terrible. Let's say marijuana is terrible. The question is, whose job is it to protect us all from something so terrible? Answer, it's not the government's job. You know how this fine young citizen is not going to become a pothead, which I hope that she doesn't. She's not going to become a pothead because she has what the ancients used to refer to as a daddy. And it's my job. It's not the government's job. So libertarianism says, hey, government, you've caused a lot more problems than probably unintended, but in an effort to desire to do good things, you've taken on a job that's not yours, and you've caused a lot more problems. And so we would just like you to back out of that whole conversation. Thirdly, that libertarianism is anti-war. I don't think, and listening to some of the conversations this weekend, I don't think it would be a fair assessment to say that libertarians are anti-war. What I think it would be, a fair assessment would be to say that libertarians are pro-liberty. And that includes letting other countries be free as well, and not always be interfered with. And so there's been this mentality in America of late that we've been in continual regime wars for a very long time now. This is with Republicans and Democrats in office, that we've been sold this idea that Americans are the good guys and we're going to liberate people overseas. And the reality is, some of those nations don't want democracy. They don't want what we do, and that may be shocking to us. But the idea is that they ought to be left alone. Libertarians are not against America defending itself against foreign attack or anything like that. But the framers of the Constitution, the founding fathers, wanted to leave the world alone, let the world do what the world is going to do, and to see to the protection and the flourishing of our own country. And so that's three things libertarianism doesn't mean. It probably doesn't mean a lot more than that, but that's what comes to mind in some of the conversations I've been hearing, particularly, again, as I've talked with Christians in Fayette County, that they think it means liberal. No, it doesn't. That it means pro-weed. No, it doesn't necessarily. Just wants the government out of those things, those questions. And then that it means anti-war. It doesn't mean those things. So what does it mean? What's the positive? What does libertarianism mean? What are we committed to? Hey, could you grab that? Thanks, love. Number one, libertarians believe, interestingly enough, what Jesus said when he said the golden rule: do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And basically what libertarians have done is they've applied that as one of, if not the key premises of policy. Meaning, if I want somebody to treat me a particular way, I'm going to treat them a particular way. And what libertarians have done is they've applied that to the state as well. So I would say personally the golden rule is a good rule to live by, that I want to treat other people the way I want other people to treat me. But what the good that libertarians have done for us is they've said, hey, that is true, and it's also true that the state needs to do the same thing, that the state is to do unto others. Like, if the state doesn't want their stuff stolen, they shouldn't do that to us. The principle, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is the idea that you don't take someone's right and you don't take their stuff. You don't initiate violence against people or their stuff. Seems like a novel idea, but the government has been doing this for a very long time, and so it needs to stop. So the idea of taxation, libertarians have a lovely axiom that taxation is theft. And so as a Christian, biblically speaking, I think that there are certain things that the government does have a right to tax, but property is not one. You can't tax income. You shouldn't be taxing those things. That should be use tax only, and even that should be very, very minimally low. The premise is that just because it's right doesn't mean it's the government's job, as referenced before. That, look, if there's a rich person over here and a poor person who's needy over here, we might as humans look and say, it would be a really cool idea if this person, some of their wealth went to this person. But the question is, whose job is it to see to that? Whose job is that? Well, biblically speaking, and libertarianism speak, would be, if the rich guy wants to share, he can. But that it's not the government's job to come in and inform the rich person that he's going to be sharing now. This is not, that's not right, it's not true, it's not just, it's not good. Everything that's right is the government's job. There are some things that the government has endeavored to do, and they've just messed everything up, and they need to get out. Okay, third and last, that liberty is something that God has given to man, to people, to mankind. And it applies to people, and it applies to their property. So there's a story in the scriptures so by the way, all libertarians would yes and amen that individuals have inherently God-given rights. Even if they're atheists, they would say, even if they're atheist libertarians, they would say they have certain rights that nobody can take from them. Well, that is an idea that really finds its impetus, finds its foundation in the scriptures of the Old and New Testaments. And so as a Christian, I would say an atheist doesn't really have a great reason to affirm such things, but as a Christian, we have every expectation to affirm that. And so The key text on this, one of the key texts on this, there are countless key texts on this in the Bible, but my favorite one is the story of Naboth's vineyard. So you have an evil king in Israel named Ahab, who's married to Jezebel, an evil woman, and you have this guy who's a godly man named Naboth. And under the sovereignty of God in Israel, they cast lots for the land, and they allotted land, and that became land that extended to their family forever. And so Naboth had a vineyard, and his vineyard happened to be right beside Ahab's castle. And so Ahab went to Naboth and he said, "Hey, can I buy your vineyard from you? Can you tell him, can I buy your vineyard from you?" Naboth said, "Absolutely not. The Lord forbid. This is something that I got from God, and I can't give it to you. I can't sell it to you. You can't take it. You can't buy it. It's mine. It's not yours." And so Naboth was under the crazy assumption that God had given him something that no man, including the king, the sovereign king, had a right to take. He didn't have the right. Naboth goes home and he's really bummed. And so his evil wife says, "Hey, I know how to do this." She doesn't do lawful means. Neither has the government ever done lawfully taken what belongs to people. She hired men to accuse Naboth publicly. Interestingly enough, she accused him of blasphemy. And Israel stoned him to death with stones. And then she went to her husband and she said, "Rise up and take possession. The field is yours." And so he, happy-go-lucky, goes down to the field to take possession. And he was met by the man of God, Elijah, the Tishbite. And Elijah looked at Ahab and he said, to borrow a phrase from one of the greatest sermons ever preached, "It is payday someday. God saw what you did and you will not get away with it." There is a moral evil associated with those in power taking something from those not in power. This is called oppression. It's called theft. It is not right. It doesn't please the Lord. And he will judge every nation that won't protect certain things. So do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Just because it's right doesn't mean it's the government's job. And lastly, that liberty is God's idea. It's something that he irrevocably gives to people and that the government has no right to take it. So vote for me, Fayette County Judge, and we'll apply these things locally and change the world. All right. God bless you.